I started observing the whole thing myself about 30 years ago. And at the time, the topic was still relatively new and uncommon. I thought it was incredibly strange that CO2 in the air, which is only present in negligible amounts, could suddenly change the world's climate. So, because it is our basic working method, we gathered a group of experts and consultants who specialized in this topic. There are professors in atmospheric physics, professors in meteorology, and other scientists, and they supported us in exploring this topic and putting together what we then published and presented to decision makers in politics and economics, as well as concerned citizens. One relatively well-known term is the so-called greenhouse effect. There's supposedly a relationship between the CO2 content in the atmosphere and the temperature on Earth, and supposedly the CO2 content in the atmosphere raises temperatures on Earth by 33 degrees Celsius in the natural way. So, the assumption is that it would be 33 degrees warmer because we have infrared active gases in the atmosphere called greenhouse gases. It is also called the natural greenhouse effect. That's complete nonsense. So we've put together everything that leads to the transfer of solar radiation from the sun to the Earth. This energy is accumulated in the atmosphere or on Earth's surface and is then redistributed without actually increasing or decreasing the total amount of energy, because the Earth can't absorb energy all the time. If the amount of energy had been constantly increasing, it would have become hotter, and at some point the Earth would evaporate. And obviously, this has not happened for the last 4 billion years. This means that energy must be constantly emitted back into outer space. But in reality, Earth is cooling due to radiation, and that's because the Earth is cold, not hot like a star, and can only emit infrared radiation, which is in the invisible range. But this energy radiation is very high. The atmosphere is what actually cools us down. The atmosphere radiates into space. Now we're in for an unexpected point. Let's take it one step further. Let's think about what's actually in the atmosphere that might be radiating out there. 70% of Earth's cooling is caused by infrared active gases. And now we can ask $1 million question. What is another name for infrared active gases? It's the greenhouse gases. The term greenhouse gases doesn't exist in physics at all, nor does it exist in chemistry, which classifies the substances. In fact, it was invented much later, after the research foundation about the function of these gases had been made available, in order to construct a certain political message out of that. This is just a contradiction, because at one point, the genius of propaganda invented the term greenhouse gas. He should have been awarded the Nobel Prize in marketing for it, if there was one, but it has nothing to do with physical reality. Interestingly, if we go back to the early history of science, we'll find the fact, which has been known for over 100 years, that infrared active gases actually cool the Earth, not heat it up. The first paper that attempted to quantify energy fluxes in the atmosphere was written back in 1917 by a British meteorologist and engineer, William Henry Dines. So this basic knowledge has been around for a long time, and the question is, why has it changed somehow? Why have more and more people started to back, willingly or unwillingly, that greenhouse gases should now be only called greenhouse gases, not infrared active gases? The fact that we're creating a whole new doctrine, a whole new world of thought, that they're now dangerously overheating the planet, has to do with money and power for the saviors. That's why they constantly use children. Municipalities hire climate managers who make their way into the last nursing home to preach the doctrine of dangerous greenhouse gases. And what are the consequences? As a result, energy taxes and energy levies have been imposed under the guise of saving the planet, when in fact they are only meant to fill empty government coffers. A lot of what needs to be researched costs a lot of money. Meanwhile, the so-called climate researchers are being showered with money, especially the computer models that are being done all the time. They're incredibly expensive and they're completely pointless because it's impossible to simulate the atmosphere, the chaotic processes that go on in there. If something has been falsified, has been proven to be untrue, it means that in the normal scientific process, those hypotheses should be excluded from further consideration. What we're finding out now